morning, people. This time we're going to do a little talkie video instead of the music ones to the digital art y'all been seeing. Okay, I got asked on the Wolfamino how I do my fur texture. Well, the thing is, it depends on what style you have drawn in. That depends and determines your style of fur you're going to be doing. If you're doing a semi-realistic animal, most people use fur clumps, which is common, but in real animals, the fur doesn't clump that much all over the body. So if you're doing a non-realistic style or a semi-realistic style, the fur clumping or smooth cell shading works good for that. If you're doing a more realistic piece, your fur is not gonna, it's gonna have a few areas where it would clump naturally on the animal. But other than that, it would be one hair at a time over a flat base color, which takes forever. This one here that I'm working on is Bone, which is for one of the leaders on the Wolfamino of their character. This character belongs to Ink. And I did a semi-realistic drawing, which is common on most of these communities. And we are going to... So there will be fur clumps on this because it is a semi-realistic style. I figured I could show you better than explaining it, because sometimes it's hard to understand, you know, a verbal thing. It's easier sometimes to see it. So I'm going to do something here I normally don't do on my artwork, which is start doing color in a section here and start doing the detail. That way you can see what I'm talking about. Now you'll notice on this piece I am not using Prismacolor pencils. I am not using Prismacolor. No. I am using pencils that you can get at your local Walmart. That they most commonly have you get for school, which is the Crayola color pencil. And I'll tell you something, I used Crayola color pencils for flipping years, and I do mean years, and this was on commissions and everything because I couldn't afford to buy the expensive stuff. And they work just as good. They're a little harder to blend sometimes because they're a harder lead pencil, whereas the Prismas are soft leaded. But you can get really good results with Crayola pencils. I used them all through high school, them and Praying, all through high school, and, you know, years after that. So they do work really good. It just, with them, it takes a little bit more time than it would with the Prismas, but it's gonna come out just as good. It's not always about the product, it's just how you use what you have available to you. And I know some people cannot afford Prismacolor, so it's not good to do tutorials all the time with high-end art supplies, because not everybody can afford that. Sometimes it's good to show people how to do things with a more affordable supply. So that's what we're doing. Okay, I have done my base with a gray. And this is just the regular Crayola gray. And I took a little bit of the color Slate over it. There it is. You can see the worst. This one's tiny. And now I'm just going to take my black. We work in layers just like you would if you were doing a digital piece. You work in layers no matter what. Whether it's traditional or digital. Most people know I'm a better traditional artist than I am a digital one. There are 14-year-old people out there that can digitally color circles around me. And that does not bother me one bit. because this generation is all about electronics, where my generation, well, we didn't have stuff like that. So, as you can see, you can just start drawing your lines, and you just, I'm trying to make sure the camera stays right here so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Now, this is for a semi-realistic style. This is not for a realism piece. You would go about doing the fur totally different for a realistic piece. And I will make a video when I have a realistic piece in, once I get caught up on my mountain of requests, which I am swamped with again. After I finish all these requests, I am not taking any more requests for a while, because I am starting to get a partial art block, which is not good. So I need a break from other people's ideas for just a little bit. Plus, I'll probably have a few commissions coming in for Christmas, and commissions with me are always priority over trades or requests, because I'm being paid by a client to do stuff, and usually I have to work on a deadline. So, and I will say this, if you commission me, please make sure you give me the right mailing address. I don't like to have to resend stuff back because I get a return to sender. I actually had this happen here recently, and I have the artwork sitting here at the house because the person gave me the wrong address, and so it was returned to me. So, yeah, just make sure you give me all proper information. I am credible. I have sold art on the internet for years, even back when I was in high school, so I'm a very credible person. Very professional. I'm not some weirdo out here on the internet that's gonna, like, do something to you. But, you know, I understand people being cautious nowadays, because it's not like it was back in the day when I was a kid on the internet. So I totally understand that. But you can see what I'm doing, and you can do the same thing that I'm doing here digitally too, whether it be grayscale and then colored, or just color it straight out. But it's a lot of going back in, you know, getting rid of the white noise. Oh crap, excuse me. And just making sure you don't have any of that flipping white noise, which drives people crazy. And you will have to go back in with your black and do touch-ups. I mean, you have to do that even with Prisma. But with Prisma, it just all kind of like blends, and you gotta sit there and work, and it just sometimes gets muddied when you do that. Crayola does not do that, because it is a hard lead. And Crayola and Prisma do work well together. So, you can mix them, and they marry very well, because I have used them together quite a bit in the past. And Prisma also works good with, like, markers, too. They work fantastically with markers. And just sometimes you have to use a hard lead with Prisma pencils, because where they have the softer leads, sometimes they can be hateful little creatures to work with. But yeah, it's just like anything. It takes time and effort and to look good. And as you can see, I'm just going back over my lines from once I've had my camera where it needs to be. Wow, imagine that. I'm getting better at this. But yeah, you just go back over so that it looks more prominent. But again, this is for semi-realistic, you know, fur. Real fur does not clump this much. I mean, you can go look at wool. If you're wanting to do realism and realistic fur, just study, like, look at your dog. If you have a pet dog, I mean, look at how his or her fur lays. If it's long-haired dog, or wolf pictures. You can look at wolf pictures and see how the fur lays if you're wanting to do realistic looking fur. But you will be doing one hair at a time over top of a base, just like you know, like that. I mean, it takes a while. Trust me, I've done realism. It takes a long time to do a realistic piece. I have worked on stuff that's taken me like a week or more to do. So I know it takes a long time. And artists who do realism don't do it all the time, because it does take a really long time and you don't have a fast art turnover. Where a lot of them will do some realistic and then they do semi-realistic most of the time, because semi-realistic lets you have a higher art turnout. So people will have something to look at while you're working on, you know, a really realistic, detailed piece. And that's like me, I'll swing 2 or 3 things at one time. It's just like on these requests. I'll work on one for a while and I'll switch and go to another and work for a while. I never work straight through unless I just have one request. It's like last night, I whipped out a pretty good little portrait piece that I did digitally in IBIS Paint as a request, because I could get out easy. Even though digital art isn't easy for me really to do. It's like not second nature to me like my traditional stuff is. But I'm relearning everything I'd forgot about digital art. So, yes, if you don't do something all the time, you forget how to do stuff. And I am not a digital artist. I dabble and do some abominations that look okay, but I'm not like super great at it. But I keep at it. I can be to the point where I can feel remotely accomplished, I guess, with digital art, but it'll never be like, to me, like what my traditional stuff is. That's just the generation I was born in. And now all I ever had growing up as a kid was, you know, traditional stuff. I never had all this digital things that kids have now to where they just do everything digitally. I mean, it's better for the environment because you're not using paper and stuff like that, yeah, but I don't know. Something about drawing on paper and canvas and stuff I like better. But this isn't all of it done or anything, but it kind of gives you an idea what I'm talking about. You just have to keep like building your layers. My house is really dark, so I'm sorry if it's hard to like see anything. But it gives you an idea what I'm talking about. Again, the fur clumps are just something you do on semi-realism. Realism is totally different. Maybe I will have a piece in where I'm doing realism, or I will just do a realism piece to make a short video to show you how to do the fur on that. And that way it better helps. But this is for semi-realistic. You just do the clown. And where he's dark and he's a black wolf, it's hard to see what I did. But you know, it's really basic. It's really simple. You just gotta work with it. And you're gonna have your own style and your own way of doing it. Everybody does. You just gotta play with it. I personally don't do good with fur clumping because it's unnatural. And I like to do the more realistic coloring when I color with the individual hairs, because it makes it look like you can just take your fingers and run through their fur. And I like that style better, but I do this sometimes with some of the characters because I see that most of their artwork is that way, especially if it's done like a cartoon wolf or fantasy wolf. Most of them are done in that style, so I try to stick with what the character's done in when I do it for somebody else. I mean, I could have made this guy look real if I wanted. But it would have took